Okay, so here we have the driver's side wheel assembly or brake assembly. I should preface this with saying that I have not done anything to this side except for remove the wheel and loosen this nut. And the reason I loosen this nut is because it's easier to do with the wheel on, so that nothing's spinning, the axles aren't spinning. So loosen the nut, remove the wheel, and then you'll be to this point. So first thing I'm going to do is start by removing this anti-rattle spring just with some needle nose. It's easy enough to, you can use a screwdriver or something, but I just don't want it to spring out in my face. Go ahead and remove our guide pins for the brake caliper. But first, we must remove the dust caps. We have a little tray here just to put all the parts in. They shouldn't be that tight. Once you have that, you might need to use those same needle nose to grab onto those things. Just pull them out, toss them in your tray. Grab a couple zip ties. And this is going to be tight on the rotor because you've been using the brake, so if you just give it a little wiggle, it'll open that piston just enough where you can wobble it out. The inside brake pad is going to stay with the caliper because it has a spring mechanism that fits inside the piston. So you can just pull it out, you see that spring. Lay them down just in the same order. This one should just come right out. Lay them down on your table just like that. We're going to put our brake caliper up here on the spring, and we're just going to secure it with some zip ties. I don't have long enough zip ties, so I'm just going to use 2. This way you don't have things flopping around and you don't have to let it rest on the hose like it's so tempting to do. Just zip it up there. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be out of your way. Okay, next thing is our caliper bracket. We're going to remove this bracket. It's removed with 2 18mm bolts just back here. These can be a little tight, but they're not that bad. This is going to allow us to remove the brake rotor. We're just going to set things down in the orientation that we take them off, and we're going to put things back in the holes that we can if possible, so we don't lose track of things. So this one's on the bottom, so I'm just going to set it down here on the bottom. This one's on the top. I'm just going to set it on the top. Bring this bracket over, lay it aside. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the lower sway bar link bolt, and I'm going to loosen the top one. This will allow me to rotate it up out of the way so I can not have any problems when I'm messing with the axle. And that is a 16mm. So we're just going to loosen, or we're going to remove the bottom one. We're just going to loosen the top one, just so we can tweak it up out of the way like that. I'm even going to tighten it a little bit so it doesn't flop around. I'll throw this bolt back in the hole so we don't lose track of it. Good to go. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Now we're going to loosen our, we got to get these lower ball joint bolts off, and we also have to remove the bolt from the bottom of the stud on the tie rod end. And that'll free the knuckle up. Real quick though, I'm going to loosen this, I call it the OSHA screw on the caliper. So, you know, when they put on, so it doesn't fall off and break someone's foot. Just throw that in your tray, set your caliper aside. Now we have a little better look at what's going on here. Now I'm going to even go a step further and say let's go ahead and remove this backing shield for the brakes. It's an 8mm. Some of this stuff you may have to spray and let sit for a while. I'm just going to try my luck. These are caked up with a bunch of dust and stuff. But they're small, so I'm just going to hope that they're not too tight. Set these all in your tray. Stubborn. There's 3 of these. I don't know if this bearing is bad, but the other side was bad and I want to do both of them. I already did the other side. So if you don't feel like, oh man, this guy's cruising along, you know, it's always faster the second time. Headlamps are so nice, especially when you're in the side of your garage that is challenged by light. Okay, set our backing plate over here. Now we really have a good look at what's happening here. So next we'll go ahead and loosen our tie rod end. And that one's going to be a 19mm. You're going to have to use a deep socket unless you have something better than me. Just go ahead, loosen that up. These will all probably come off fine without spinning, but when you go to put it back on, it's probably going to want to spin, so you'll have to hold it with a 6mm hex key. There's a spot in the end of the stud to hold it, so you'll have to use a box wrench or something to get it tight enough before it'll stop spinning on you. Then you can use your torque wrench to get it back together. And for this, I'm going to grab a little sledge. These you can use a pickle fork, but I find that those really mash up they can mash up the rubber boots. You know, if you stick a pickle fork in here and try to get it, you know, and bang, 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 it'll sometimes tear the boot. So I just like to smack the knuckle with a hammer. Comes right out. You just got to shock it, kind of break that seal. So there you go. Avoid those pickle forks when all possible. Okay, lower ball joint, a 13mm, not a 15. Go ahead and, oh, before I do that, just get yourself throw the nut back on the tie rod end so we don't lose it. Get yourself a paint marker and just draw a line. Draw a line up here on your strut to steering knuckle so you know how far up you need to come when you reinstall it. And also draw a line around these bolts so you know where they were, because the holes for this is slotted. So just draw some reference marks so you know and it doesn't affect your alignment enough to mess with. And we'll remove this retaining plate. We'll just throw these bolts right back in. You can lubricate these a little bit with some PV Blaster or something, whatever you have. I like Free All, seems to work really well. So we'll set that aside so we know where it is. Now we're getting close. This bolt up here is going to be a pain in your neck. So I have some tools that make it a little easier. It's a nut and a bolt. So you got a 18 millimeter on one side, 18 millimeter on the other. The nut comes off no problem. It's this bolt that gets rust welded all through this area of the steering knuckle. I sprayed some stuff on the other side. It didn't really penetrate much, but I did put this impact on it, and it did get it after a while. And it didn't seem like, when I looked at the bolt, it didn't appear that the penetrating agent had gone very deep at all. So I'm not going to even worry about spraying it this time. I'm just going to unleash the power of the Milwaukee impact on it. So again, this bolt up here, ooh, that's a tight one. All right, where's the 18 millimeter? It's tight. I'm going to put it on number 3. Man, I love that tool. This is the side that sucks. No match. Look at all that rust coming out. See all that? This Milwaukee, man, is money. Worth its weight. It'll come. Just got to keep spinning it. Oh. See, the threads on that are fine where the nut is, but the rest of this just gets so much rust on it. So we're going to put that nut back together. We'll clean that up and throw some anti-seize on it later. We're pretty much there. You've got to spin this nut off. Since it's already loose, go ahead and spin it off with my socket. Set it aside. Okay. So, this is ready to pull off, and you might need to tap on the axle a little bit so that you don't overextend any of these CV joints. Alright, needs a little more shock than the rubber. I'm not hitting that hard, don't panic. There it goes. Okay, so we got the axle so that it's free. Pull it out here, let that hang. Now, we got to get this steering knuckle off the strut. So same thing. It's starting to come. One thing I forgot is the wheel speed sensor. Just grab your little pick, hook under that. I haven't put any pressure on it yet or tension, so it should be okay. But we'll just keep hitting it. There it is, guys. Okay. Ew. Yeah, I guess this one's bad. I don't know if you can see that. Pretty bad. So I'm glad we did both. All right, we'll clean this up before we put it back on, make sure the splines are clean. But let's go over to the bench and see what we can do about getting this pressed apart. All right, so here's our hub assembly. There's our bearing. Here's our hub and our tone wheel for the wheel speed sensor. So the bearing actually has to be pressed out. I'm going to be using the Harbor Freight 20-ton press. It's like $150 if you use a 20% off coupon. It's so cheap. And after you spend 60 to 80 bucks a pop on having these pressed in at a shop, you just think, I just got tired of it, so I thought I'm going to buy one and see if I can do it myself. So they've been fairly easy. You know, there's some trial and error sometimes. You notice I got a newer bearing here that was ruined because it was pressed on and the hub was pressed in, but you know, forgot to put the snap ring in, so you had to press it back out, which separates this inner race just like that when you press them out. So this is the other side that I did the other night. So this one I use just for having something to press on that's big enough. They're like 10 or 12 bucks or something, or 30 bucks if you buy them at the local store, but if you buy them online you can get them cheaper. So anyway, we have to push this hub off before we can access the snap ring, because the bearing has to be pushed that way to remove it. You know, it hits against a lip in here and stops, so you have to press it out that way. But before you do that, you got to press this hub off. So this inner circle is the hub. That is the hub right here. So we're going to find a bearing removal tool, a press die that'll be the right size for that. 40? How's that look? We want it to be able to push in, so I think I'm going to go with that, 40. I got lucky, but it was a little dirty from last time, so we'll use that. And we got to just get the press set up so that we can do it. Yeah, I'm probably going to do something like that. Put this 40 in here, put this socket in here, just gives it a little more height. And then the ram will come down and push that hub off. So yeah, I think I just put these here. Yeah, some people might be freaking out because I'm using wood. It's like, you know, for half the stuff I do, wood is fine. It doesn't, when you have something lined up correctly, it doesn't really take all that much pressure. It just takes the right pressure. That's another thing. Just make sure that you take your time with this setup, because once you get it set up, you'll be in good shape. But you don't want to skimp on the setup, because that's where you may run into issues. The last thing you want is something blowing up in your face. And usually, if something is seeming like it's not pressing, it's not releasing, it's usually because it's hitting something. That'll just about do it. We got some scrap bars here that I can throw under it. You really just want to make sure you have this thing as straight as possible. Okay, I think we got it. We got room underneath for the hub to fall, and got everything seemingly supported. Just gonna go ahead and make this a little snug. And then we will bring this down straight on there. Just go slow. See how I barely did anything and that hub's already moving. You know, if you have it lined up, it's just not going to fight you, and wood is just fine. See, there we go. Nothing to it. Just take your time on the setup. Okay, so bearing's still in there, but that gives us access to the snap ring, which is going to be just a pain in the neck because it's all rusty. So we'll spend the next little bit working on that. See, the dust cover comes off, just destroys the bearing. So if you mess one up and forget to put the ring on, it just ruins it if you have to remove it. And we will also have to remove this inner race with a 3-jaw plier or puller, and that's pretty easy. So I'll show you how to do that. Trying to shock that snap ring a little bit. Be surprised if this already is loose, but worth a try anyway. Just gonna soak it with some break-free stuff. Roll that around, just let it really get in there. That thing is gonna be a bugger. They sell new ones of these. I'm trying to salvage mine. Sometimes I wonder why. Oh, look at that, start to move. There we go. Yeehaw. Okay. That was fun. All right, got it set up. Now that that hub assembly is off, this thing took up a lot of space underneath. So now that that is off, I can move this stuff a little closer together, and it actually makes it a little easier to prop this stuff. But you can see I still needed to use that 3/8 inch bar. Again, you could probably get away with using a lot of wood stuff, but that's just personal preference. I don't feel bad about using this stuff. I rest cars on this stuff, so I'm pretty sure I can use this stuff to push a bearing out. So I've got everything all set up, just ready to press. I just have my little bearing press adapter. You know, I just bought a kit on Amazon. It wasn't very much. You could use a socket, anything you want that's the same diameter or similar, close. But yeah, I took a socket in there to take up some space. So I'll just go ahead and start pressing. You'll see just how easy this stuff starts to come apart. There it is, fellas. Bring it out the bottom. There's the bearing, minus the inner race that's still stuck on the hub. So go back over and look at that. $150 for the press. Not too bad. You can see we're going to just clean this out with a little bit of emery cloth, and I'm going to use the pick to get in that groove and just really kind of scrape that groove out where that snap ring was sitting. And we'll get this cleaned up and ready to install the new bearing, and then we'll press the hub back on. Again, these are cheap tools. I mean, you can see I'm using a lot of Harbor Freight junky pliers, and pick sets, and the press. You know, about this kit on Amazon, it wasn't that much. I want to say it was probably less than $100, but some of these things you don't have to do it. Yeah, you could pay somebody else to do this, but you're going to be looking at hundreds and hundreds of dollars, especially if you just drive your car in there and you want them to change your bearings. You're going to be hundreds of dollars and you still won't know anything. So that's my dad's motto. So he said he could usually do things 2 or 3 times and still come under budget. Suppose what it would cost to have somebody do it. So you get a few tools, you take some time. If you like working on this stuff, it makes it a little bit better. I tend to kind of enjoy it. Just a little bit of time to just chill and hang out in the garage and do my thing. Luckily I have a nice wife who understands me. Okay, so I'm going to use a little something like that just to take up that space. It's smaller, it's slightly smaller than this hub race, so that as this inner bearing race pulls up, it's going to slide over that adapter. And I'll just throw a little socket on here, and that'll make sure that my puller is going to work. So I'll go ahead and get this. Again, this is like a Harbor Freight made in Taiwan. Just a little 3-jaw puller. Might have been AutoZone, but still. Some people cut this race with a Dremel. I'm just not into that. 2 of these seem to be holding okay, but just can't get the 3rd jaw to hold. But I can't pull it with 2 unless they're opposing each other. So we'll try it. Just need to hold these in. Let's see if that works. Okay. Yeah, it just fit right in there. Pulled it right over. There's the next one. There's our hub. We didn't grind on it with a Dremel, so we can just clean it up and get ready to press on. So we'll set that aside for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and clean up this knuckle. Just a little bit of emery cloth. Sand that out a little. I'm not trying to change the diameter of this thing, I'm just trying to clean it. Just keep that in mind. You're just taking off all the scale. You don't want to sit there and sand it for an hour. Just taking off the rust and stuff. So we can lubricate it and get it back in. Okay. And I'm just going to use this pick. I'm going to scrape out the top and bottom edges of it so that the snap ring behaves and it's not inhibited by any gunk in here. Same in there on the inner edge where that bearing is going to stop. Okay, I'm going to be satisfied with that. Clean up this a little bit. My Actually looks really good. Probably not a bad idea to hit this inner spline with some brake clean. Okay, so that's ready to go. Okay, time for the new bearings. There's our new bearing. So just going to throw a light coat of grease on here. And then, you know, you could grease the inner part of this too. I would set it in there, and then we'll go back to the press. Not using a lot, just a little coating. Try to keep the dirt out of there too. Okay, we'll go get this set up on the press. So I got my steering knuckle mounted up here. I had to drop this down a couple of holes just to give me the clearance in here. But then, yeah, it's just resting on the flat surfaces. Show you. I just have this resting right through here on this arbor plate. And these arbor plates were supposed to be machined. I can see where they have torch marks on them, where they've been cut. Not every surface is completely flat. These surfaces are, but these ones are not. It's a little annoying. I may true them up with a grinder someday, but for what I usually do, it's not too big of a deal. So I got those sitting there. You know, I tried with the factory cast arbor plates, which I don't typically use them if I don't have to, because I'm not sure how durable they are. I tried with that, you know, it just wasn't the right height. I threw a 2x4 under there with a piece of this 3/8 bar, and it seems to be just what the doctor ordered. And then I'm just putting one of these up here to stabilize it a little bit. So, time to grease up our new bearing. I've already gone over it and made sure that it's at the right height for what I'm going to do. Did that off camera. Just giving this a little lubrication so it doesn't fight us so much. And then I'm just going to set that up in there. Try to get it straight. It'll true itself up once it starts going in, the bore. And like I said, I have one of these around from a previous mess up, or you could always use the one you just pulled out. I mean, not a big deal. This will help me get it in the right spot. I might have to move it a little bit. I'm using a 74mm plate from my Amazon bearing press kit. Just going to move this whole thing over just a touch, so we're right about in the center. Yep, that looks good to me. And like I was saying, if it's binding, something's up, because these things, as soon as you put pressure on them, look at that, just like butter. I think we're there, bottomed out. Okay, we can take this off, take this off. There's our bearing right where it needs to be. Looks like it's in there nice and square. Check the back side, make sure it's pushed up against that lip. Sure is, folks. So now we need to clean up that that big C-clip, and just going to sand it down and get the rust off it so it's nice. and then make sure it's straight, and then we'll compress it and put it in there. I'll probably throw this in the vise to do that. Just went over this clip with some emery cloth and straighten it up a little bit. Just want to, yeah. What I want to do is put on my face shields. It'll bust my face with this clip. Went in real good. Yep, that worked out well. That's really important to do before you put the hub on. Or you'll be buying new bearings, because in order to take the hub back off, that happens. Which is, again, why we have a few of these kicking around. So, back to the press, get it set up. And I should note that I'm going to grease this shaft, the inner race, and then I'm going to set this down on the press because it's nice and flat. It's really easy to, you know, to perch up there on some of those arbor plates. And then I'm going to put the knuckle on top and press the knuckle onto this hub. But when I do that, I'm going, that'll cause this snout right here to push, you know, to apply pressure this way on the inner race of the bearing. And then I will use the press and I'll put one of these little dies on here on top of the inner race, because if I push on that outer race, that inner race on top is going to separate. It's going to push it out the top when it starts to push down. So I'm going to put my little die on the inner race and push on the inner race. I may actually grab the right size and put it in there and push on both so that it's totally over the top of both races. There's quite a good space though in there. So yeah, I think I'm going to push on the inner race. And that'll push the hub right on. No problem. Yep. Okay, let's do it. I'm going to go ahead and throw my press die on top here so that I don't have problems getting it in a second. Okay, well there's that. You can see it's going to clear our press just fine. I just want to center that over the inner race. I want to make sure that I'm opposing the pressure that this is going to exert on that inner race. I'm opposing it with this, so we're just smushing it together. And the outer race is held by that lip inside here, so it's not going anywhere. So we can kind of move this around just a little, just to get it nice and straight. But you definitely want to oppose that pressure in the inner race. And as I've said before, if it's not binding, it should just slide right on. See that? We're just going to go until it bottoms out. That's bottomed out. Okay. Wrong side. I love those little press dies. Those are nice. Go ahead and take this out of here. Get my die out. And there you have it. New bearing. Pressed on. Nice. No more wobbly. So we'll go ahead and clean this out and get it back over to the vehicle, and we'll get it on. First thing I'm going to do is get this sanded out a little bit here. Just clean it up a little with memory cloth. Being careful not to get a bunch of grit and junk down in my splines of my bearing and hub. But I do want to just smooth this out a little. It's not horrible in here. It needs to be pounded on. You'll see. And then I want to do the same thing with this strut, just a little bit. Not going crazy, just take off any big old chunks. Just going to use a little fine bristle brush to see if I can get any grit out of those splines. Shouldn't be much, but who knows. Like that stuff, just cleans really well. We'll lube this up with some fresh grease. I'm just, these gloves, man. Down to 9 fingers. Again, I just think it's worth having a little something on this, just based on my experience with the last one. Just had to beat on it for a while. So I'm just gonna throw a little of this in here. I don't know. Okay, let's get this on the road here. So, just going to move this into place. And it's got to line up. They do a great job of this big tang on the back lines up with this groove, or this crack, split. There you go. So it can really only go on one way. It's going to need some persuasion though. That hole in the tang has to line up with this, and it was sticking out just a little bit because it was catching on the edge of that split at the beginning. But now it's on there. So we're lined up, we're up to our line. Time to throw our bolt back in. We're going to do that with some anti-seize. Okay, bolt going through, nut on the back, and we'll go ahead and put this lower ball joint in right after we grease up the splines. That's just so that when we're torquing on this, it gives you a little bit of support because it's anchored in right here, so it's not flopping all over the place. So go ahead and get a little bit of grease on the axle splines. Okay, just gonna roll this out here. Again, you don't want to pull out on this axle. You want to leave it in its position that it's sitting as for the most part. There we go. pull out on that, get it kind of started. There it comes. Throw that nut on there so it's not going to come out. Just snug it down as best you can. Just to bring it mostly in the position. So it's not going to come out, at least. That's what we want. So we'll go ahead and put the ball joint retainer bracket. I'm going to take the ball joint retainer bracket, take the bolts out, set them down in the right spots. And these ones, you should have marked the heads underneath, since the holes are not round. That way you can make sure it's in the right spot going back together. And these are 15 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. So it can be a little hard to read a 15 foot-pound reading. Especially with a Harbor Freight torque wrench. Right there. Right there. I'm actually going to break that one loose. Just make sure that it's not more than 15 foot-pounds. Same with this one. Because you got to take it 90 degrees after that. Or thereabouts. Okay, we got those good. And what I would do now is get this pinch bolt tightened up. And the pinch bolt's going to be 44 foot-pounds initially for step one, and then 90 degrees after that. I like it. It's not rocket science, just nuts and bolts. So for anybody who's hating on me for not using a torque angle gauge, go do something else. Okay. While I'm here with my big wrench, I'm just going to go ahead and snug this down so that our axle's in the right spot. I'm just going to do it until it starts turning, because there's 5 stages of tightening this bolt. So we're at least snugged up there. So next, we're going to go ahead and put our ball joint, or our tie rod in through the steering knuckle. Again, this is going to spin on you because it's not sucked in there and torqued. So you got to use your 6mm Allen wrench to hold that. Oh, did I bring the wrong one? Yeah, 6mm Allen to hold that steady while you get it snugged down some. And this is our 19mm. Throw that Allen wrench in there. It's kind of a two-handed operation here. Once you get it snug down, since the shaft on the tie rod end is tapered, it'll have enough friction force, have enough friction that it'll stay put, and you can wrench it down to the torque spec of 33 foot-pounds. It's a 19 millimeter. A little bit more. Okay. We're making good progress here. Just lower my torque wrench. I don't like to leave them pumped up. Okay, so let's just run through this. We got our tie rod end installed. We got our nut snugged up. We have our pinch bolt done. We have our ball joint done. So the next thing to do is going to be get the brake assembly reassembled. First thing you got to do with that is install the rotor. No, let's do the back plate first. Yeah, that'll help. These are those little 8 millimeter bolts. These are just like 11 inch-pounds or something. Back plate's on. Time to install the rotor. Don't forget your OSHA screw. And use a number 3 Phillips on this so you don't mess up your screw. You can get it snug with a number 2, but it just doesn't feel quite right, and it acts like it wants to twist inside the screw. You use a number 3, thing just is perfect. And you can just snug it on down. Okay, rotor's on. Next is our caliper bracket. These are those 2 bolts that we set aside, and those are going to be 92 foot-pounds. Yes, I'm referring to a cheat sheet. Okay, just put the top one back in the top. These are 18 millimeter. Okay, next thing, if you want to do it right now, it makes sense just to get your sway bar link reconnected. So I'm going to do that, and that is a 16 millimeter bolt. Just going to loosen this upper one again. Remove the lower bolt. We'll torque them to 11 foot-pounds. Next thing is our caliper. So we can go ahead and cut our zip ties that are holding it up into place. Now we have our sway bar link hooked up, our caliper bracket, our tie rod end, our lower ball joint. There's only a lower ball joint on this, except for the tie rod. So now all we need is our pads and our caliper, and then we should be ready to get the wheels on the ground, do our initial stages on these bolts. I haven't done the one on the passenger or the driver's side either, so do them all at the same time. Do all those stages. So go ahead and cut our zip ties for our caliper. And then, like I said before, that inner caliper, or that inner pad, has the spring that you'll have to slide into the piston. And then the other caliper will just slide right in here. Just like that. Slide it into place. I think we're good. So I'm going to take a quick second and clean off these guide pins. Just wipe them off with a paper towel. You don't want to put them in there all gooey. We'll go ahead and slide one of those in. We'll go ahead and get it started with our 7mm. And these just go to 21 foot-pounds. That just, to me, I give another little bit. 21 just didn't seem like good enough. That's up to you. I like to know I hit the minimum and then give it what I think it should be. Sometimes, not everything. Just need to install our spring so you can get that like that. Okay. Dust caps on our guide pins. Go ahead and throw those in. All set. Okay. Now it's time to clean up a little bit and get the wheels on. I torque the wheels. They're 17mm lugs. I torque them down to 120. People might think I'm crazy, but I don't want them falling off. I want to torque them initially and then do the back off thing. You know, you torque them down to 148 foot-pounds, then you loosen it a half a turn, and then you roll the car 1/2 turn of the wheel, and then you tighten it to 37 foot-pounds, and then an additional 60 degrees. So 148 foot-pounds is our first torque sequence. Leave it as this one. Yep. We've got them torqued to 148. Just gonna put the weight of the car on it. Just gonna check it one more time. Okay. Now we'll loosen them 1/2 turn and roll the car. And I must say, loosening them a half a turn is basically just taking all pressure off of it. Yeah. Let's see how it broke loose there. All right, let's roll this forward. Now we're going to torque it to 37 foot-pounds. Doesn't seem like a lot. And now we give it 90 degrees. So we're going to here. Nice. I just realized that the torque was 37 foot-pounds, then 60 degrees. I did 90, but that's all right. I feel better about that. So, on a 12-point nut, each little point would represent 30 degrees. So you could, you know, if you were doing the 37 plus 60, you could just mark one tooth and then 2 teeth away, you can mark the hub, and you just turn it until that tooth gets to that mark on the hub, and that's your 60 degrees. That's what the book said. I read it wrong on my paper, so anyway, I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to loosen it now. Put your caps back on. Well, there you have it. That's the front bearings on a Mark IV Volkswagen. Hope you liked the video. I enjoyed doing it and saving a few bucks. Most importantly though, I'm going to enjoy the nice quiet ride. So I'm going to get into the rear bearings and hub assemblies. Those are a one-piece unit. They're already pressed together, so we'll get onto that and see you another day.